Hey there, in this video we'll be learning about multi-stage Docker builds to create an optimized production-friendly image of your application. We know that the Docker file of any project is the file that stores the image definition, and it has all the instructions required to build and start your application on a Docker container. So taking the example of the current Docker file that you see on the screen, which belongs to a Next.JS application. This Docker file was created in my previous video where we were discussing how we can Dockerize a Next.js application. And like any other node environment based application, this is using a node image as its base image. And then the main commands that we need to start this application are npm install, npm build, and then npm start to finally start our servers. If you have any doubts about what you see on the screen right now, I would really recommend you to watch my previous video, which acts like an introduction to the Dockerfile and how it can be used to build a Docker image and start your application on a container. Now, just as a refresher, a container is just an OS level virtualized package which has all the necessary code, configuration, and dependencies needed to run any application. And in this case, it's just a Next.js application. What we want to discuss and do now is to convert this Docker file into a multi-stage Docker file, which will look something like this. Now, a multi-stage Docker file can have two or more build stages. As you can see here, this particular one has two stages. So this is the first one and this is the second one. So a multi-stage Docker build is still using just a single Docker file, but will have two or more stages to create the final image. Now, each of these from instructions that you are seeing here mark the starting of a new build stage. So the first one is on line number 1 and the second one is on line number 10. These two mark the beginning of two separate build stages. And if you notice, we have named our first stage as build image, and the second stage doesn't have any name because it's our final stage and we don't really have to name it. The naming is done so that we can access the artifacts that we created in a certain stage. So if you notice here carefully, we're using the copy command and we're adding a new flag to it from whose value is the image name of the previous stage. So in this particular line, we're basically saying that copy the node modules from the previous stage into the next stage, thus enabling us to only copy the directories or artifacts which are necessary to run our application. You'll understand how this is helping us to create a more optimized image which is smaller in size and more compact just in a few minutes when we will create this image from scratch by using our previous basic version of the Docker file as a starting point. So we'll start from here and improve our Docker file step by step. So let's get straight into it. And the first stage in our new Docker file will be our build stage, where we will be installing the npm dependencies, running the npm build command, and then cleaning up the dependencies, because at the end of the day, we only want the prod dependencies or production dependencies to be present in the image. We don't need the dev dependencies. So we'll be clearing up our node modules, and that will help us in reducing the image size of our Docker image. So I'll give the name to the first stage as build image. And then there will be another stage which will again be using Node 16 Alpine as the base image, but we'll get to that bit later. In our build image, the first few steps will stay the same. We'll create a new folder called user app. We'll set that as the current working directory. We'll copy all of our files there, run npm install, and then run npm build so that our build files are ready. But after this, let's do some cleaning up, where I'll be deleting the node modules folder and then running the npm install command again. But this time I'll be running it with the production flag so that only production dependencies are installed. And since this was just an intermediary stage, we don't need the startup command here. So I'll just remove this. And this is what our first stage looks as of now. Then in our main stage, first of all, what we'll do is define a new environment variable by using the env directive. And the environment variable that we need to define is node env, where we'll be saying that the current node environment is production. And here too, we'll be creating a new directory called user app and setting that as our active directory. So I'll just copy these two steps and then notice very carefully what I'll be doing next. Since we need our source code and our build files to run the application, instead of copying all the files, what we will be doing is just copying the main files from our build image. And for that, the syntax is I'll say copy from, and I'll mention the image from where it needs to be copied. And in this case, we only have one stage where the image name was build image. So I'll just use the same name. So I'll be copying from the build image the node modules, which are present under user app node modules, into my current working directory. And this was the whole point of using multi-stage builds, where if you remember, we only installed the production dependencies in the end. And here in our main stage, we are just copying the production dependencies from our build image. Now we'll also copy the package JSON and package log files. And then obviously we need our public and build folder, which is next. So here if you notice, we are only copying a small part of the application. We're not copying the source folder, we're not copying the pages folder. All of that has been built and is already present under the next folder that we're copying. And that is all we need to actually start our Next.js application. Now since all of that is ready, all we need to do is expose the port and give our startup command, which is npm start. Let's save this Docker file and we'll be building it with a new image name Next.js prod for production. Now before we start building our application, there was one correction that was needed, is that we didn't mention the user folder in the path name. So we'll just add it for all of them. Now it's proper. We'll run the build command and wait for the build to finish. Our new image has built. Now let's run Docker images to check what its size is. And as you can see, for Next.js prod, this size is 273 MB, which is 100 MB less than the image that we initially created. This size difference will increase significantly when you'll have more dev dependencies coming inside your Next.js application. In my experience, I've seen the difference to be as much as 500 or 600 MB. Let's also try to run a container from this new image to test if everything is working fine. So we'll run the same command where the port forwarding is the same from 3000 to 3000. But instead of Next.js basic, we'll be using the image Next.js prod. And then in the logs, you can see that the server has started on port 3000. Let's access this and we'll try to hit a users page again. And as you can see, it's accessible. So here we clearly saw how with using multi-stage Docker builds, you were able to reduce the image size. And to further improve the Dockerfile, all of our copy command that are happening in the file system of the image should be done by a user which has appropriate access. And for that, we'll be creating a new user group and a new user. So I'll say run add group and name it user group. And then I'll add a new user by saying run add user. And the name of the user will be application. And for all of our copy statements, all we need to do is add a chown flag where we mention our new user. So I'll copy this to all of our copy statements. And there we go. Now chown is the abbreviation for change owner, where we're changing the owner of the file system to application. So the whole point is to not give our container user the root access, so that it's only responsible for the files that you're copying and cannot alter the rest of the file system. And once you're done adding the change owner commands, you can simply run docker build again. That was it for the video. I really hope that this helped you guys in understanding how to work with Dockerfiles for your Next.js application and how you can create a optimized production ready Docker image, which can then be used to start your containers in production. And please let me know if you want to see more content around Docker in the future, and subscribe to this channel for more content around software development. I make new videos every week. Thanks for watching and I'll see you guys in the next one.